What makes a video game timeless? This question popped into my head the other day while I was talking with some friends, and I thought about it a bit and came up with 4 different categories on the different types of timeless games. So first off, most obvious and talked about point, the graphics. Most of the discussion about timeless games on the internet is about the graphics. That seems to be the main priority. For example, most of the time when you see people talking about timeless games, you will see something like Wind Waker come up a lot, and I'd say that's mostly because of the art style and how the game looks. Not to say that the gameplay is bad or anything, but I think what makes the game timeless is largely because of the art style they chose. But the reason I wanted to talk about graphics is because it's also the hardest one for games to be considered timeless. Not nowadays anymore because we've reached like a peak on graphics, but look 30 years back. How would a video game 30 years ago become timeless with all the restrictions they had? All of the games universally, if you compare them to new games coming out, which is completely unfair, I'll be honest, but they have aged like milk. So if you were thinking about playing a new game or something you haven't played before, what would you pick? Would you pick one of the new games that look good and play smooth and are technically way better? Or would you go for an old game for the nostalgia? Because personally, the only time when I play really old games is when I have some kind of connection to them, because I played them when I was little or something like that. But most of the time I wouldn't even consider playing an old game because I'm just spoiled by all the new stuff that comes out. Look at the most technically advanced and awesome graphics from 30 years ago. Virtua Fighter. That shit looks like some toddler built a clay figure or something, man. Of course, that is the toughest part for a game to get. Although, in the SNES era, you already had a lot of games that looked very good because they were in a pixel art style and they weren't held back by their system. They just used the system's technology to its best to make a good looking game. And I mean, look at Super Mario World. That still looks awesome today. Look at games coming out today. There are so many indie game pixel art games that are coming out and they're all beloved. I mean, Pizza Tower, Jump Knight, Blasphemous, all of those games. Of course, they are more advanced than SNES games. I'm not saying that. And graphically they are also better. But the SNES was like at a point where I would consider the graphics to be good enough to play, and that not being something that holds a game back. But then when you look at the N64, holy shit. To me, that's a downgrade in graphics, if you look at it today. Obviously at the time, it was amazing, 3D, and that's the only way it could have gone and should have gone, because without all of those old games, we wouldn't be where we are today, of course. But the thing that is the most important for a game to be timeless in the graphics department is the art style. Because I guarantee you none of the old games that try to be realistic looking still look good today. Because they try to imitate real life, but the technology just was not advanced enough at all to do that. That's why games age bad. When they try to do something, but they can't do it, but they try it anyway, and that's what happens. For example, the Wind Waker art style is so good and so nice looking that if you upscale it today, it's almost as good as Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, I would say. And Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild were obviously both inspired by Wind Waker, at least in the art style, but it's smart from Nintendo. They are never the ones that try to be the most cutting edge or have the best graphics or something. They always just do their own thing, and that's a perfect example. The Switch isn't that powerful, but the games on it look awesome. Look at Mario Kart. That game is over 10 years old now, and it's originally a Wii U game, and that game still looks amazing and is like the most sold Switch game. And I mean, graphically it's not any worse than the other games Nintendo has published since then. And I don't think that speaks against them. I think that just shows how good they are, that they have reached their peak with their art style basically. They have reached the technology necessary to make Mario look the way they want him to look and have the games look the way they want them to look, so they're basically timeless in terms of the graphics. It's like an old Disney movie, you know? Yes, they are over 100 years old at this point, some of them, but the Disney animation still looks so awesome and people still watch all of those movies just because the art style is so good and so timeless. So yeah, I'm rambling a lot. Then we get on to the second category, and that is gameplay. Games that are timeless because of their gameplay. For me, this is the most important part of the game, even more than graphics. And it doesn't matter to me if your game looks photorealistic. If the gameplay sucks ass, then I won't play it. Graphics take a huge step back. They are very nice to have, I'm not denying that, but they're focused on so much now, and it takes so long to develop those things, and it takes so much space up on your hard drive. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. Look at games 10 years back. Look at Shadow of Mordor, for example. That game is 10 years old, and I think it's about 35 gigabytes big. And I think that's at a point where it was like, okay, we can't stop pushing it now, you know? It's at a point where it's like, okay, this is great, this is awesome, but it's not worth to keep going on anymore, you know? Well, what is it called? Diminishing returns, that's what I mean. Yes, we're graphically improving and getting better, and games look better every year, marginally, but it takes so much. It takes so long to make those games, and it takes so much space up. It's just not worth it. That's why gameplay is the most important aspect for me. One of my most played games on Steam is The Binding of Isaac. The game is like 10 years old now, but I still regularly play a run, and every time you play it's different, because it's a roguelike, or I think it's the best roguelike actually. If I was stuck on an island and I could only play one game for the rest of my life, Isaac would probably be it, because it's endless. Every time I play the game I unlock something, and I get a new item or new boss, and you unlock new paths, and it's just infinitely replayable. Maybe some of you would consider Isaac not old enough to be timeless yet, but I think you can tell that this game is a classic, and it doesn't matter how much time passes, this game will always be awesome, because you just have an endless combination of items and paths and stuff to unlock, and once you have everything, you have to do it 3 times to completely finish the game, just to get like a sense of how insane that is. But the gameplay is just perfectly made for controller. I think controller is the way to play the game, and it's just so satisfying. It feels like an arcade game, you know. Since the devs are still updating the game, maybe it's too early to consider it timeless. So let's go way back, 40 years back, to June 1984. Do you know what happened in June 1984? Ghostbusters came out. And Tetris. Yes, of course I'm gonna talk about Tetris. It's probably the timeless game. It's a game so simple, but so fun, and weirdly enough is not restricted by its hardware at all. It came out on PCs, like the really motherfucking old PCs. Those PCs when they were called personal computers. But when it came to the Game Boy, it was perfect for the Game Boy. For most of my life I thought it was made for the Game Boy, until I googled and found out, oh, it was actually a Russian guy that made it for a PC. Of course I don't have to talk about the graphics with Tetris. It's like 10 assets and, you know, just blocks scoreboard, and what else? Oh yeah, you have a black background sprite, of course. You know, new versions of Tetris are still coming out every year. It never stops. I'm not regularly playing Tetris, but I remember a couple of years back when I was in IT school, I would just play Tetris the whole lesson on like a website, because it was like we had a thing called skill learning, which was basically just learning without a teacher. We had everything on a PC in the internet, but we had to stay in school, so I basically just played Tetris there. Fun fact about me. But yeah, you can just pick it up, you can just play it for as long as you want to and drop it instantly, and it doesn't matter. You can just pick up right where you left off. It's Tetris. It's the perfect game for like a wedding at a dentist or waiting on a bus or something. But yeah, that brings me to my next game, which is also on the Game Boy, but it released 10 years later on the same system. Isn't that kind of stupid? I guess nowadays it's not that weird, but how did the Game Boy live 10 years? Look at that thing. But I guess they still made Wii games in 2019. So anyway, the game I'm talking about is Pokemon. Everyone knows what Pokemon is. No, even your mama, your grandma, your aunt, your grandfather, your fucking dog, everyone knows that. But for a very good reason, because Pokemon just used everything the Game Boy had to offer to make a game that was just perfect for it. And it's a whole different caliber than Tetris. Pokemon has a huge map with tons of different sprites for Pokemon trainers, landscapes, buildings, and you get a whole leveling system for your Pokemon, new moves and stuff. Of course, the Pokédex with the 151 Pokemons, and they somehow got all of that to run on a glorified calculator. It's just iconic. And because it's a turn-based RPG, gameplay is still as good as it was 25 years ago. There's not... So the gameplay isn't offensively bad. It's a turn-based RPG, how you know it. It's an old-school Pokemon game, how you know it. If you like Pokemon, you can still go back and play the first one. It's still awesome. I played Pokemon Silver for the first time, the OG one, last year, and I enjoyed it. Maybe I have brain damage, I don't know. Tell me, do you enjoy it too? Do you have brain damage? Should I go to the doctor? But I think every Pokemon game up until the 3DS era is timeless, just in terms of the graphics and the gameplay. Especially the ones on the DS. Those were just... they looked awesome, and just like on the Game Boy, Pokemon always used the system to its full potential, and they tried to incorporate the gimmick, if you can say that, of the system into the game somehow. But I think since the Pokemon games became 3D, graphically they're absolutely not impressive anymore. Absolutely not. And to be honest, I have played basically every single Pokemon game, and Pokemon Scarlet was honestly the first one I couldn't finish. That was just sucked so much ass. I don't know how to explain it. It's embarrassing how they thought it would be justifiable, you know, for the biggest franchise in the world to bring out something like that. Holy shit. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about here was that a deliberate design choice will always look good if you know the limitations of the system and you have a design and that you can fully visualize within that system. Then that can make the graphics just timeless, you know. The third category, communities. What I mean by that is two things. First thing is the community keeping the video game alive for a long period of time. For example, Gary's Mod still has more players on Steam than Overwatch 2. And believe it or not, it's gonna turn 18 this year. I feel so fucking old. And that is only because of the amazing community keeping the game alive, creating mods, hosting servers, creating their own communities, and of course playing the game for like 20 years now. Garry's Mod without the community would be like an empty school gym. There's a bunch of cool stuff waiting to be used, but if no one's there, then it's pointless. You're just like Garry's Mod. If there's no one there to play with, then it's boring. The community is what keeps the game interesting and engaging. The biggest mode, at least at the time that I played, was TTT, and that completely relied on the community. Without it, TTT wouldn't work. All of the assets used, like the weapons, were mostly made by the community. And I used to play on a server called Escape Restart, and I gotta say, that's where I had my best gaming experiences ever. I was friends with a lot of people in the community, and I even met up with one of them in Amsterdam, KJ the Camel. If you see this, what's up, bro? I hope you're doing good. Haven't heard from you in a while. But it was a really enjoyable time in my life. I basically spent my entire summer 2016 playing on there. And ever since, I've been looking for something similar. I think it was like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. I don't think I can replicate that. Now, the other side of community is Skyrim, where you obviously don't need a community to play it, but the community is what makes the game good. Most Bethesda games that are like half-baked, and then the community fixes the game and makes it good. Just like Skyrim, you know? I mean, Skyrim Vanilla is fine after they released the Anniversary Edition. But with mods, Skyrim is one of the best games of all time. If you put together the Skyrim and Skyrim Special Edition mods, you have over 130,000 mods. There are mods that turn Skyrim into a completely different game and genre. You could only play Skyrim for the rest of your life, and there would still be mods that you haven't played. That is why Skyrim is in my top 5 games of all time, because the community made it timeless. By the way, check out my potions only Skyrim challenge. It should be right up here somewhere. So now, we had graphics, we had gameplay, and we had community. Now we get into the big boys. The games that are timeless and have the complete package of graphics, gameplay, and community. First off, my favorite game of all time, The Witcher 3. Yes, the game isn't even 10 years old yet, I know, but it's been long enough to see that it's timeless. In my opinion, it has the best balance in graphics. The game has more of a realistic approach to graphics, but it's not photorealistic. It still has that fantasy art style. Every person, like people don't look unrealistic, but they look more like a fantasy depiction of what a human is, what a medieval peasant is. And I mean, it came out when graphics were hitting their peak, back like in 2014, 2015, and we've been pretty much on a plateau ever since. Graphics, yes, they improved. I recently played Jedi Survivor, and I'm still playing it actually. It looks absolutely amazing. I think it's the best game graphically that I've played yet. But it's also not like that giant of a leap. For example, the PS2 to PS3 leap, I think that one was huge. And I think games from 2014 to 2015, that's really where you can see, okay, graphics had like a big upgrade again, and they reached a point where it was like, oh, this is it, you know? And especially with the 4K update, I think it can still stand toe-to-toe with any of the games that come out today. Next is the gameplay. I want to say they perfected it, but I also know that a lot of people don't like the combat a lot. And I agree that the combat is not the most complex, but to me it's just so satisfying and fun. And they really nailed the Witcher aspect of it, you know? Yes, you're Geralt, you're a superhuman, and you can definitely notice that when you fight other humans. You just mow through them like they're nothing. But it's still challenging because of the monsters. And like narratively it makes sense, like the gameplay and the character Geralt is like they're connected, you know? To make you actually, I know it sounds stupid and it's fucking cliche, but it actually makes you feel like a Witcher. You don't feel like a god. It's not a power fantasy game, but you definitely get that Witcher vibe because of the whole package. The music, the atmosphere, the sounds. I don't know how many times I just stopped and listened to everything going on around me in Witcher. And it's just absolutely stunning every time you do it. My favorite place is Velen. That's just like a really depressing and moody place, and I love it. Especially the music. And like the whole lore with the Crookback Bog and stuff. And of course the community of The Witcher, which is still modding the game. And the mods obviously change everything again. If you want a completely new experience, download the mods. Check them out, it's awesome. In general, I recommend anyone playing a game to play it again, but with mods, if the game has good mods. But in the case of Witcher, it's definitely worth it. The game has a lot in the top 20 on Nexus mods. There are a lot of mods for that game. And the only other game that I could personally find which ticked all of those boxes for being timeless is Red Dead 2. Don't shoot me, I know it came out in 2018. It's not an old game yet, but it's timeless. Nobody can tell me otherwise. The game is a movie, it's a life simulation, and above all else, it's a passion project. You can feel all the love and effort put into the game at every corner, and every time I play the game I notice some detail that I didn't notice before, and it just blows my mind every time. Seriously, just look up details in Red Dead 2 on YouTube. You will find so many videos showing you everything, and it's insane how detailed the game is. And that's not even taking the story into account. If they cut the story out, I think it would be one of the greatest sandbox games. Just the gameplay is so satisfying and the world is so awesome. It's definitely already one of the greatest games of all time. Since it came out, it was one already, instantly. It instantly became like a stone cold classic. So in conclusion, what I think connects all of those games and aspects is that the games were made with passion and with freedom. The developers had the freedom to make the game they wanted to make, and they weren't held back by the companies, marketing, whatever, or technical aspects. They just did the thing, they just did the game, and it works. Of course, not every game that is a passion project is timeless, and there's a lot more to it than just passion and freedom. But I think that's the one aspect that connects all of those games, the one common thing. I don't know what you call it. But yeah, anyway, let me know what you think is the most timeless game of all time, and I'll reply to you and we can have a discussion in the comments. So yeah, thank you for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.